Alrighty, this video is going to be all about how to organize qualitative variables. So we're going to start by creating a relative frequency distribution to help organize our data. Now we can use a relative frequency distribution for both qualitative and quantitative data. We're going to focus just on the qualitative data first. So we're going to use a relative frequency distribution by listing all of our data values, the unique ones that we see, in one column. Then our second column is going to show the number of times that that data value occurs. And then we'll have a third column that shows the relative frequency, which means the decimal or the percentage of times that those values occurred. So we're going to use a fairly simple example here. I have a data set of favorite animals from a sample of 20 kindergarteners. So we're going to make a relative frequency distribution for this data set. So the first column is what our data set represents. So I'm going to create my first column by labeling it favorite animal. And you probably write a lot faster than me. There we go. Our second column is going to be the frequency. And then our third column is the relative frequency. And I tend to shorthand relative frequency to RF. So in future videos, if you see that shorthand RF with one of these tables, just know that that is relative frequency. That's just something I do. I don't know that that is a common shorthand. And then I'm just going to make my table look a little bit nicer so it's easier to read. These lines are pretty common. I'm going to throw in some extra lines that are just for me. This is my preference. You do not have to do this. This is just something that I want to take 2 seconds to do really quickly. Otherwise, it can make the table a little bit hard to read. And I want to make sure that we can read this table. Doesn't have to be perfect, just want it to be a little bit nicer. I think I need one more line. Okay, there we go. All right, so now that I have my table written out, I'm going to go through the data set and I'm going to look at each unique animal that I see. And I'm going to go down each column as I do this. So in the first column, I see dog. So I'm going to start by writing down dog. And then continuing down this first column, I then see horse. And I'm going to use different colors. Hopefully you can see the different colors just to help organize everything for us. Whoopsies. Okay, so sorry about that. And then after horse, we have elephant. After elephant, continuing down the columns, we have cat. And then the last one is all the way at the end, and it is giraffe. So I've just gone down and I've written each unique animal that I see in the data set. So now I'm going to go back through and I'm going to count each animal, how many times it occurred. So for the first one, dog, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 dogs. And notice I'm putting a little tick mark next to each dog to help me keep track of the ones I've counted, but I'm not crossing them completely out. This is a good idea to do something to help you keep track but not cross it out completely, because in a lot of cases, we're going to have to work with the same data set for quite a while. And so we don't want to make the data unreadable. So now horse, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 horse. 1, 2, 2 elephant. Hopefully I'm not missing any. Cat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cat. And then I think there was only 1 giraffe. All right, so now comes a very important step that tends to get forgotten. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I have 2 ways that I can do this. The first way is I'm going to look back at my data set and I'm going to make sure that every data item has a little mark next to it. The other way that I can do this is I'm going to scroll down just a little and I'm going to make the last row in my table total. And I'm going to add up this frequency column. So 7 plus 4 is 11, 13, 19, and 20. And I had 20 kindergarteners that I sampled. I have 20 animals in my original data set. So the fact that I have 20 as the sum of my frequency column, okay, I'll write here that I did a sum. That means I didn't miss any numbers and I didn't double count any numbers. And that's important because when we move on to the relative frequency column, we want to make sure that we haven't double counted or missed anyone. Because now what we're going to do in the relative frequency is I'm going to take the frequency for this row, so there were 7 dogs, and I'm going to divide it by the total number of kindergarteners that I asked. So 7 kindergarteners chose dog out of the 20 kindergarteners that there were in total. So that's a relative frequency of 0.35 or 35%. And all I'm doing is taking the decimal and converting it into a percentage, which is done by either moving the decimal 2 places to the right or multiplying by 100. So 0.35 is the decimal for relative frequency. 35% is the percentage relative frequency. So 35% of these kindergartners have a favorite animal of dog. So I'm going to keep doing this for all of my animals. So 4 over 20, that is 0.2, or if we want the percentage, that would be 20%. Now, typically we don't have to show the fraction in this column. I'm showing it so that we see how each of these are calculated. And also, we don't typically do the decimal and the percentage in this column. You would usually pick one or the other. Do you want to show the decimal or do you want to show the percentage? And it really is dependent on which one you are more comfortable with or which one you're being asked for. Two over 20 is the next one, and that is 0.1, and that's 10%. 6 over 20 is 0.3 or 30%, and 1 over 20 is 0.05 or 5%. Now we have another way to check to make sure we didn't mess up any of the math here, because this is the first thing we've done that really involved math. So we're going to sum again. So we're going to add everything up. When I add the decimals, I want my decimals to add to 1. If I'm doing percentages, I want that to add to 100%, because that means that I've captured 100% of the data that I was given. If we had to do some rounding and we have 0.999 or 1.001 or something like that, that's okay. This is okay. They are slightly off, and that might be due to some rounding that we have to do depending on what the denominator is. We didn't have to really worry about rounding here because all of our denominators were 20. We will have an example later where our denominator is not 20, and so we can talk about some of the rounding intricacies that we have to deal with. This was just a quick example to show you guys what a relative frequency distribution is and how we want to work through it with qualitative data.